I want to remind the audience that we are going to encourage your questions now. So, some very conscientious people will be making their way. Please think about writing your question and we'll get it up here.
Let me suggest 2 reasons why people think we still need nuclear weapons. One is they forget how terrible they are.
Yes,
they forget how terrible these weapons are. We don't remember, and in fact, it really wasn't terribly well documented, what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The photographs were destroyed, records were taken away. The ones that we see are frankly sanitized in some ways. You see these vast wastelands in Hiroshima. I've seen some that were kept in a cave in Japan, were recently released, where there are simply acres of charred bodies. Acres and acres of charred bodies. You'll remember the descriptions of the flesh falling off of people, of blood oozing out of people's eyes, of people wandering, just completely lost, their minds gone at the horror that they had suffered. When you go into a room with some of the people who talk about these weapons, and even in the ones, not even military people, my colleagues in Washington, and they talk about these weapons as if they're bargaining chips, as if they're part of a game, and we need to have as many as we can because somebody else is going to win if we don't keep ours. Whenever I go and talk, and occasionally in Washington, and I raise the idea that we might want to think about actually what these weapons do, that we have enough destructive power now to kill 9 billion people. There are only 6.5 on the planet. People are kind of, Kennette, just, what do you mean? That's not really relevant. I think it's the most relevant thing we can be talking about, and that's the reason that I think, the other reason I think that we still think we need these is because the rest of us outside don't say the emperor has no clothes. What do you mean we need these weapons? These are genocide. Eisenhower, when he was first briefed on nuclear weapons, in 1954, when he first came into the presidency, said, heard what these weapons could do and said, these are not weapons of war. These are weapons of genocide. Eisenhower. And I think you may not mind being the victim of genocide, because if you think the weapons are going to come at us, but I think many of you would be very disturbed to think you would be a perpetrator of genocide. And I think that's where we really need to hold our leaders accountable. We need to say to them, these are not weapons that we want to be responsible for. This is a democracy. We are supposed to be able to have a say in many of the things that go on. I know it isn't always true, but there are times when we need to raise our voices, and if we don't have the courage now, when we have a president who actually says that he wants a world without nuclear weapons, and I'm from Chicago, remember, I'm from Obama land, he means it, but he needs our help. He's a community organizer. He knows that the community needs to raise its voice, and I think that's how we're going to get rid of him. We're going to get rid of him when all of us get together and tell our government, our leaders, we don't want these anymore.
I certainly agree with that, but I would say, as I said earlier, the president has not just needed our help on this. Let's start with the current one, actually. He needs a lot more than our help. He needs our demand. He needs mobilization. He needs action. When you go back to Eisenhower, I'm very interested in the quote, and I just to get the reference. He said that early on, and I can believe it. And Eisenhower, by the way, is the one person who has testified as a high official that he argued against Hiroshima before the bomb was dropped to Stetson and to Truman. And nevertheless, it was during his administration, that we moved from targeting cities with Hiroshima-like weapons to H bombs, for which the Nagasaki weapon was a trigger. So that by the end of his administration, and this is where I came into the picture, when I asked a question of the Joint Chiefs over Kennedy's name, I drafted a question that Kennedy sent to the Joint Chiefs. And this is in an article I wrote. You can look at my website, ellsberg.net, an article on truthdate.com in September of this last year. that when I asked this question, how many people would be killed if your plans, the Eisenhower plans, but this was under Kennedy, were carried out as planned? And the answer by the Joint Chiefs came down to 600 million people, or 100 Holocausts. Now that's not genocide, that's multi-genocide, many multi-genocide. It's 100 Holocausts. In fact, as Lynn Eden is the one who's pointed this out, that was at the time an underestimate by at least a factor of 2, because it ignored the major effect of thermonuclear weapons, which is fire. It wasn't taken into account, deliberately too hard to calculate. But it also ignored nuclear winter, and it was 20 years later, you were referring to the 9 billion, 6 billion, 20 years later that we discovered that that was 27 years ago, in 1983, that the smoke from the cities we then, and still contemplate under some circumstances, hitting, the smoke would blot out the sunlight, cause a drop from 20 to almost degrees centigrade in the summer, freeze the water, freeze the lakes, destroy the crops, lead to famine, and possibly destroy most life on Earth. Not all, but most life on Earth. That's been true ever since. Now, that was regarded 20 years ago as requiring some 1,000 warheads. 1,000. We had, at that time, going on 30,000 each. 1,500. It turns out it takes much less than 1,000. In fact, hundreds of warheads could cause that effect. 1,500 each is more than enough to destroy most life on Earth on a hair trigger. So both sides have this. It is always, no president deserves anything other, no president, Republican or Democrat, deserves other than the utmost condemnation for persisting in this construction of a doomsday machine, keeping it on alert, and above all, in the last 20 years with the Cold War on both sides, and the Russians too, and other countries for going along with it. It's not just us who are threatened. Every country on Earth is threatened by our plans and our capability. And which country can say its leaders or public have acted appropriately to use their influence to change that situation? I don't know of one. Some are worse than others.
We're going to call for these. You can't get elected to anything today unless you prove you're tough. You can't get elected using the L word. The liberal is the political idea that dare not speak its name. So in this environment, at $2 billion a day, including nuclear, and the nature of our culture today, I don't know how the hell you get 2/3 of the Senate so are we starting from the wrong direction here? And by the way, we all know millions of people are going to die. And, it just, you cannot tell a teenager, don't have sex, your head will fall off. Apocalyptic messages don't work. And as you know, I'm a brilliant man. But I don't know how in the world you turn a population around. You're essentially saying, if the mother's son has a gun pointed at her son, and the son has pointed the gun at his assailant, we're essentially suggesting that someone go over to the mother go over to her son and say, honey, put the gun down, we'll all be safer. It's just not